Okay, good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome, guys. We are about to jump in to our pounds for breakfast this morning. Just quickly having a look here, what is happening on our one particular camera. I do believe we can get it sorted. Let's have a look at what is happening here this morning. Okay, there we go. We are live, guys. Welcome to Pounds for Breakfast, guys. Today is the day. It's Thursday. I've been speaking about this day the whole week. Today is the big day that we're expecting some massive opportunities and moves within the markets, right? We have fundamentals, we have earnings reports, and a lot about what's going to happen today is going to affect next week and the next 2 weeks in a massive way across the board. So if you haven't been prepared, get sorted. It's a beautiful rainy day, depending where you are, if you're encountering massive rainy day. And yeah, that is where we want to be. So massive congratulations to our community that was with us last night in terms of those earnings we saw on Facebook. Facebook absolutely tanked. We're seeing that start to trickle down into the NASDAQ, but I do expect we can see some big moves as a continuation of that, right? Now, we are going to move very promptly this morning directly into the news, but I can see a massive amount of our community is live with us this morning. Guys, please make sure, as always, you hit that like button on YouTube, right? If I can see you guys in the chat, if I can see you guys in the room, if you have found value from these broadcasts for these shows, go and smash that like button. Make sure you are subscribed so you never miss any of our new content and upload. So today's the big one, right? We have pounds for breakfast, we have dollars for lunch if you've got $100 account, and then we have our evening session, which is going to be Apple, it's going to be Amazon, it's going to be huge, it's going to be massive. A lot more information on Apple and Amazon, not as straightforward as a straight meta crash, but we are going to see what's going to happen in the markets, and we're going to break this down step by step. So we're going to start off this morning with some of the news and what's busy happening in the world, and we're going to jump straight in on the local front to have a look at what has transpired and what is developing. All right. So looking at South African news and on the local front, we can see that our new finance minister is essentially going quite hard, right? Against my initial expectation. I thought it would be quite soft, quite dovish, but I do believe that he's putting in a lot of policies to try and strengthen things. But again, let's hope he sticks around. Let's hope this is another hire and fire. He comes in too bullish and they say, well, wait, this is not what we need. We need a new finance minister. So listen, praise for him. Big respect. He has a huge task on his hands to try and shift the current state of events, especially on our parastatals, Eskom, Transnet, as well as SAA. So let's see what he can do. Let's give him some thoughts and prayers and see if he can start to slowly shift and turn things around. This is going to have an impact on the Rand, and we obviously just need to follow that as closely as we can. Looking in US news, we can see most of the market is obviously speaking about Meta stocks tanking. Last night, we obviously were in that earnings call live. We heard the earnings. For most of you who are part and parcel of that, we've learned a ton about the business. We've learned a ton about the outlooks, and it was quite entertaining to be a part of it. Sometimes slow, it's sometimes draining, but sometimes the rewards are massive. Now, in most of the cases, we only banked a couple hundred pips. I closed at break even, and I want to show you where the NASDAQ is currently sitting because I do have a position, I do have an outlook over where this can potentially go, as well as US 30 sitting in a very vulnerable state of affairs. But as we can see, that's what the market's main discussion is. And we can really see that there is definitely a slowdown on the cloud computing side of all of these businesses, as we've seen from Microsoft, as we saw from Google, and as we've now also heard from Facebook, right, in terms of the revenue growth. And I think the biggest thing that we ended with on a bombshell last night was investors are asking, he keeps reinvesting, specifically speaking about Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, he keeps reinvesting into these unproven technologies. And one of those ending questions was, why don't we redirect money into things that we know that works? So, that was something he struggled to answer. And as a result, Facebook is not sitting in a good place, right? They missed avenues and they gave a really light forecast on their next quarter for Q4. So Facebook stock really low at this point in time. Is it worth buying? I personally don't think so. I think it hasn't hit the floor yet. There's still quite a bit to go. Now into the UK and into looking at the euro, as we're going to look into the fundamentals, we have the European Central Bank giving an interest rate decision. Now, even though this doesn't directly correlate to the pound, it affects that whole area of the economy, right? So the next interest rates, we will break this down this afternoon in a lot more detail, but in essence, we're expecting that 75 basis point hike. And prior to the dollars for lunch, I'm going to do a full analysis on all the past interest rates sitting on the euro and what that means for the euro and how we can potentially capitalize on that, right? So Pound is undertaking a ton of changes. Obviously, they have the new PM, and he's going to bring in some new policies that we are waiting to see how that would affect the market. Now, looking into the fundamental data, and just before we have a look at the economic calendar, which is jam-packed, I quickly want to pull your attention to the heat map, and we can see that all of the big earners, right, even the ones that haven't yet been released, right, Microsoft, Google, and Meta, all trading substantially lower into today. Google trading 10% lower. Meta should be doing substantially worse, currently sitting at negative 5.59%. But in the after hours markets items, we're already sitting at below $105 to a single share of Meta. Interestingly enough, Apple's trading lower as well as Amazon, right? So that might be an early hint. Investors are seeing the trend. They're seeing average reporting, some hit, some miss, but are still offset by that fear factor, right? That markets won't make their targets, right? So that's a very interesting observation. But now moving into those fundamentals, we have a very, very big day today, right? So we're going to start the broadcast a little bit early. There's going to be a special broadcast because I want to cover the interest rate decision that's coming out at 2:15 on the euro, right? We then have a ton of information that's going to be coming out on the dollar, but most specifically, where we obviously are paying most of our attention is going to be sitting in these GDP for the quarter-on-quarter Q3. Now, that's going to be huge on the dollar. And then we also have initial jobless claims. I just want to find out where that is. And that's also happening at 2:30. So this afternoon's show, we're going to start a bit earlier. We're going to start at, I think, at about 2 o'clock, maybe even 2:45. And we're going to cover past data, what has happened, what is likely to happen, as well as what is, happening right in front of our eyes. As we prepare for the New York Stock Exchange, New York Stock Exchange is going to take that GDP data. Again, bad GDP data, weaker dollar, we could see indices rally, but those indices rallies are obviously going to be predetermined by these titans. They're going to do their earnings, being Apple as well as Amazon. So a very, very complex day, a very exciting day if you're going to pay attention and fully commit to the markets today. That's where my main focus is going to be. I have no meetings today. I've got nothing else. I'm purely focusing on the markets for today as well as this evening. So we have a jam-packed day, but we obviously want to jump into trading and have a look at what opportunities lay ahead for us in the markets, because that's what we're all here for. So I will cover what happened last night when we get to indices, but let's just move straight into some FX analysis and just having a look at where that dollar index currently sits and what we could expect from this if we start to get those GDP data results. Now, again, if you're a Globex 360 account holder and your account is more than $100, we're going to do a very in-depth GDP analysis on the euro, on the dollar, and we're going to do that interest rates announcement on the euro. So we're going to do a full breakdown this afternoon. You definitely want to be a part of that because it's going to be quite a lot of detail. We're going back the last 3-4 years, looking at all the trends and how we can potentially monetize on these moves and how can we benefit. Remember, it's all about being prepared when the opportunity arises, capitalizing on that preparation. Okay, so we can currently see, looking at this morning, the dollar index is trending substantially lower. We've started to break out of that key support area that we identified yesterday. And this move on the dollar, this negative dollar here, is really what we need to be seeing, right? Now, with this negative move, right, I just want to explain this. A straight decline on GDP doesn't mean an initial, dollar is going to fall. Remember, the current Federal Reserve targets and policies is in essence to get that weaker dollar, right? They're trying to slow down economy to avoid, a hard recession, right? So a slightly unexpected or slightly under expectation from a GDP perspective could stabilize the dollar and could stabilize markets across the board. What we're looking for is if we see a underwhelming GDP. So if from an expectation perspective, we see a really low number, that will then obviously force the dollar into an extended state of weakness. And then we have long positions on commodities being gold and silver. So that's the current outlook as well as indices. So I just want you to bear that in mind. If you're not going to be with us, if you don't have your $100 plus and you're going to be trading this on your own, just a little bit of a nugget of information there that you can potentially use in order to capitalize. And one day you'll be with us in our live events. Okay, so let's have a look. Moving on from the dollar index, let's just quickly touch on where we currently sit on Euro USD. And having a look at Euro USD on this time frame, we can currently see we've broken through that dollar parity, right? Now, what I'm looking for this afternoon to have a brilliant Euro USD trade, because there's a ton of opportunity here, is what I'm looking for on a 30-minute time frame is I'm looking for, will Euro USD hold up above this current market structure that she's busy posting, right? So meaning, will we see Euro USD trickle off in the course of this morning leading up to that data result? And how will the European Central Bank interest rate announcement impact the euro, and where could we see that going? Because again, if we see that dollar sort of remain neutral or strong, and that European Central Bank interest rate announcement smacks the euro hard, we could see a break in structure off of that dollar parity, one-to-one parity, and a massive fall there. So we are going to be looking at trades on FX this afternoon, and looking at into USD ZAR. We can also see that we've started to break that structure. As I mentioned yesterday in the Pounds for Breakfast, that we have that opportunity to get in long, but we also need to understand we could start to retrace even lower towards the substantial support that sits over there. Now, again, new finance minister might be influencing that, but I don't believe there's enough strength in the rand. If we do get a massive sell-off, right, looking at from a dollar's perspective, so the dollar gets extremely weak today, we could then start to look for shorts on USD ZAR as we ride back down closer to that 17 rand to the dollar. But again, anything else outside of that, we could see that massive spike to the top side. Now, just another word of warning, guys, where there is a message circulating that there could be a possible threat in Santon this weekend. I don't know, there's a lot of people who've got this message, a lot of people asking about that, and it seems the sources seem to be true. It is from a official US site that is essentially asking, their members sitting in the US consulate to not be around this weekend, right? So quite serious, and obviously that will have a bit of an impact should something happen. God pray that it doesn't, but then obviously we need to be aware of that. In other items, external event items, we need to be aware of the war in Ukraine and Russia. And from a stock market perspective, we also need to be aware in our peripherals that Elon plans on trading and closing the Twitter deal by Friday. So these are all external events sitting in our peripherals that can influence markets, and we just need to be aware of them. And again, it's not about predicting the markets, but just being aware. And that's my job, is to make everybody aware of what is happening and where we are. Right. Yes. So Zane is correct. The message was from the US Embassy. It actually is from the official US government site, but from the embassy itself. So looking into this morning, right, and I want to just point out really quickly, maybe let's start off on NASDAQ from a trading perspective. Now, I'm not too interested, and I'm just going to state this, I'm not too interested in taking a trade this morning, because I want to preserve cash for this afternoon and for this evening sessions, right? We could see a bit of a correction, a bit of volatility this morning, but all I would like to point out here from a NASDAQ perspective is this is where we are currently trending, right? This is a 1 minute time frame, and what we had from our bull run yesterday afternoon, we saw a massive retracement. We saw markets close up at that point over there, trading at $11,429 on the NASDAQ. After we opened markets, we were in profit, and then markets started to retrace. Took me out for break even on one trade and then profit on another. I just want to bring your attention to the fact that we are in this market structure. Prior to the show, while I was busy with analysis at around about 7-8 this morning, I saw that we'd hit resistance, and I put in a precautionary sell position so that when markets wake up today, that they start to absorb that information, and that's already started to happen. Now, if you don't already have or hold your sells in on US 100, I just want to point your attention to the fact that on a 5 minute time frame, we are attempting to cross through that support territory, right? Now, as you've seen in most Pounds for Breakfast shows, we get an initial direction, and in most cases, we can also see that reversal, right? So it's not the same as the New York Stock Exchange, where we get that initial direction and that in most times plays out to the distance or to the end goal. right? So I just want to make you aware of that. Now, this same opportunity, if not a better opportunity, also exists on US30. And we can see here that we're starting to push through those local levels towards the downside, right? So I'm going to pop in, and the only trade that I'm going to hold here outside of my NASDAQ sells is going to be this US30 position, because we're starting to not only break out and through support, but we've also failed that 50 fib level. Right, I covered this in quite a bit of detail last night, and that's the level there that we need to obviously pay attention to. Markets pushed through. We saw massive gain yesterday afternoon, failed, held over support, and now we're starting to break through that support level. So I'm going to be holding a US30 short with a trailing stop in the region of about 3,000 points for this morning session as we lead up into the London session. So again, very small trade, but I'm preserving cash again for the New York Stock Exchange. And I just want to make you guys aware of that. US 100 still pushing a little bit further. But again, unless you are already in a sell, unless you've got your stop losses into profit, I wouldn't be adding positions here, because we could very well see, as we know, before big news items, before big market events, we see volatility slow down into the markets, right? So a lot of the times when a person's not aware of external fundamental data that's set to be released, they'll enter a trade and then they'll wonder, why do markets slow down? Why do markets start ranging the second they enter a trade? And that's because the market is obviously preparing and trying to do its research for what is to come from a data perspective. So again, this afternoon is going to be one of the biggest influences on what we end up seeing over the next 2 weeks. Now, why is that, right? The first thing is that depending what happens on this GDP data, the Federal Reserve is meeting next week on the 2nd of November, and they're essentially sitting down to decide the next interest rate decision. That is going to be Wednesday. That is going to be one of the biggest trading days for next week. That interest rate decision will set the tone for the dollar over the balance of the year, as we've seen it happen before, right? In addition to that, we also have midterm elections happening in the US, and that causes a lot of volatility on markets across the board. So we will be covering that. We will be streaming that in quite a lot of detail, but just understand what happens today can have and will have an impact on the markets, a long-lasting impact into the next 2 weeks. And that again will then have a further impact for the balance of the year. So definitely something you want to be paying attention to as we set the tone for the balance of the year. Now, looking at gold, gold is another massive opportunity for a couple reasons. First reason, we've broken through that diagonal resistance that we've been speaking about. And, you know, when we start to see that dollar weakness, this could fuel the price of gold to get back above that 61.8 fib level. But in totality, we want to get above that $1,690 to an ounce of gold. That is our golden entry, and that's where I'll obviously be very bullish on commodities. But for the time being, we have some market structure that we can play off, and this is going to be up to you how you wish to deal with this. But ultimately, I just want to point out on a 5-minute time frame, we do have a rising market structure, and more than likely we'll see gold press into that 1655 territory before starting to take off towards the top side. Now, I would say if you'd like to get in on gold from a commodities perspective, all you need to do is simply map out these resistance levels, and should we get a breakout of diagonal resistance, that will be enough to fuel a rally on gold as a commodity. So specifically, this is currently trading on 5 minutes, and I just want you to map that out and be aware that if we break that 1669, 1670 mark, we could then start that rally on commodities. Now, again, that is with the expectation of a weaker dollar this afternoon. If GDP is hugely underwhelming, we could see a takeoff in price across the board. So this afternoon's dollars for lunch, we're going to have to be on our toes. There's going to be a lot of movement across the markets, and we're going to do things a little bit differently with our community, right? I'm going to ask certain people to watch certain assets. Those of you in our community that are MVTs, most valued traders, and you know, just been with us for this massive and amazing period. I'm going to assign each person a commodity to essentially watch, and then when we hit and break through certain levels, we're going to obviously chat about that and take trades. In addition to that, this afternoon, we are going to be, because there's going to be so much volatility and so many opportunities, we are going to be setting up pending orders this afternoon before even taking those trades. So again, if you want to be part of that, dollars for lunch, you need to have a minimum of $100 in your live account, and we will be sending out email links to that session at around about 12 o'clock this afternoon. It's going to be huge. It's going to be massive. And we are going to see the whole next week, every news outlet around the world is going to be speaking about the events of today in the markets, and you want to make sure that you're a part of that. You're right at the source to be able to take advantage and capitalize on those moves. Now, looking into other markets this morning, and I know we get a lot of questions on Brent, so let's quickly have a look at where Brent is currently sitting and what opportunities may exist for the price of Brent. Now, Brent has started its bull move, right? As we discussed, we needed to cross that diagonal. We are at a very, very important moment in the price of Brent, right, guys? Please pay attention to this, because months from now, we'll be speaking about how we caught Brent at a certain price level, right? I want you to bring your attention to the 1-day time frame, and I just want you to pay attention to this massive support level that we're going through. Now, at this point, right, if we have a look at the 7th of September, Brent was supposed to find support and start to take off on the value per barrel, right? And this applies to Brent, it applies to crude, and there is a correlation to WTI, which is West Texas Industries, which is essentially the US's version of Brent. Ultimately, we failed that level. We went into a bear trap. We went over into a little bit of a spike. And now, because we've got those two moves, right? We've got those two load balancing moves from support and resistance. We're now sitting at that diagonal. It is technically resistance, and I need you to understand we are sitting in a major point of resistance. But if we go through that level, it means that our next run will be towards that $98 per barrel that I've been speaking about. Now, should Brent reach $98 per barrel, we could then see a rally on Brent that could get as far as 106, with the next TP being in the 115 mark. Now, this is a massive move. The gearing on Brent is obviously massive. So small moves mean high amounts of pips and can be extremely lucrative and valuable. So I just want to draw your attention to that, because again, this afternoon's effects, or this afternoon's news fundamentals can have a knock-on effect into the price of Brent crude. Now, interestingly enough, and I've been waiting for Bitcoin to show us a sign of life for the last couple of weeks, we're starting to see an inkling of hope for the future of cryptocurrencies, and it's coming in the form of a very, very small candle from Bitcoin. So having a look at where BTC is currently sitting, once this little graphic disappears here, right, I want to draw your attention to a daily time frame, and I just want you to see that on that daily time frame, pretty much from the 12th of August, we've been sitting this descending triangle formation on the price of crypto. Crypto has essentially bottomed out with very little movement. We've seen fluctuations from $20,000 to $18,000. $2,000 on Bitcoin is absolutely nothing. So very small fluctuations. But then we can see we are starting to pop out of that zone, right? Looking at the 24th, barely a little nudge. And then we saw on the 25th and 26th, these two consecutive candles. So what we're looking out for on Bitcoin is any external fundamental news that drives Bitcoin. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of hacks. We're seeing a lot of exchanges. We're looking for that positive data. Again, negative GDP or a crash in the dollar will fuel a Bitcoin rally. I just need you to understand that, because remember, the whole purpose of decentralized finance or cryptocurrency and blockchain as a whole is to fix some of the inconsistencies and the problem with normal fiat-based currency and accounting systems within the world, right? That's the whole premise of cryptocurrency as a whole. So when those systems start to fail and we start to see instability, we start to see a ton of issues in the markets from a dollar perspective, being the world reserve currency, that fuels the existence and why Bitcoin and crypto even exist. So it's been extremely quiet, but as soon as we start to pick up momentum, we will shift a massive portion of our focus. We'll have dedicated shows specifically on crypto, because I believe that is still where a large portion of our future sits in how we deal with money. Now, just a quick one, guys. A lot of people ask, why crypto? Why? You need to understand the evolution of money. We went from bartering to finding precious metals as gold, and then seeing that those things store better, putting gold into reserve, getting a document for that gold reserve, which was a promissory note, really. That promissory note was standardized into paper. That paper was directly worth its correlating price in gold. And then eventually we removed gold from the system, delinked that paper from any valuable meaning. And now we're sitting with fiat currency, right? It's free floating pieces of paper. It's only worth what people and governments believe it's worth. There's no real intrinsic value. That's the evolution. The next step is definitely into blockchain and decentralized finance. There's no question about it. The technology is extremely valuable, but it needs to enter this new state where it is moving in the right direction to become a valuable storage of wealth or of value, right? So just that's a quick one in terms of that. Now, in terms of live trading for this afternoon or this morning, again, I'm not looking at holding any long positions long term. I'm merely looking at just remaining cash positive for the day as we get into that New York Stock Exchange session, right? That's where my main focus is going to be, and that's where my focus will lie. A lot of this morning is going to be preparing for the dollars for lunch, because that is where most of our focus is going to be relying on for this afternoon and for this evening. Now, guys, again, if you don't know, I'll state it again, but today is going to be massive, right? If you've been waiting to get involved in the live broadcast, if you've been waiting to fund your accounts, there's never been a better day, there's never been a better time, and there's never been a better company to do it with other than Globex 360, right? This is where it's at. This is where it's happening. We're pushing the boundaries of what is possible. We're doing things that nobody else is doing, and this is only the beginning. So you want to get in, you want to be part of our Genesis story of how things started and obviously where things are going to go. You want to be a definite part of that. Now, remember, we also have this evening a trade-a-thon that's going to be on Apple. It's going to be on Amazon. These are a lot more complex from an entity perspective than something like just a straight Microsoft, right? Or a straight Facebook. Facebook and Meta, they've been bleeding for a while. Amazon, as well as Apple, have a lot more complex type infrastructures, and we're going to do a lot more of a detailed analysis as we dive into that one. But I think the big things to watch out for today, definitely be gold, right? We definitely keep an eye on gold. We want to keep an eye on Euro USD. I also think there's a good amount of reason to also pay attention to GBP USD, and I'm going to show you why in a second, right? So as I pointed out earlier in the week, GBP USD started to create this descending or the symmetrical triangle, right? We know that a symmetrical triangle only starts to really break out or give us volume once we reach that apex, but we've started to get that breakout already, right? So GBP USD is currently doing well, right? Meaning what? The pound is outperforming on the dollar. Even with all these external events, right? Even with all these external fundamentals, the pound is doing extremely well against the dollar. This is a 4-hour time frame. And what we're going to start to see the closer we get is that we do have some structure we could start potentially taking advantage of, right? So another opportunity outside of the Euro USD is definitely going to be GBP USD. We might have some structure along those lines, and that's essentially what we want to monitor. A weaker dollar will allow a GBP USD fueled rally to the top side. The same thing on the Euro USD, which is what we obviously want to pay attention to and be ready for. Obviously gold, obviously indices. That is where I believe the big opportunities are going to lie. So I'm going to be setting up some order levels today. I'm going to look at market structures. And when we start this afternoon session, I'm going to be giving out those perimeters first and foremost. So I'm going to be giving out my levels, my pending orders, explain why I'm looking at orders at those particular levels, give everybody an opportunity to make up for their own accounts and their own trades, what they would like to do with those setups. And then we'll move into the live trading and watch as certain things get activated and certain markets move. But some of the trades we'll have to do live because we're obviously dealing with the data as it comes in. But this afternoon is going to be massive. This evening is going to be massive. So I'm super pumped for today. And we're going to be doing a lot of special content, a lot of special sessions. This evening, I am going to be teaching a little bit of strategy in terms of evening swing trade, in terms of our pips for dinner. In addition, I've got a large request to just go over some basic risk management, even though it will be covered in full in our academy, but just to go over some basic risk management for those of you who are looking at these high volatility situations and want to keep and save your account, that you're never risking more than 3 to 5% at any point in time. So we will be covering that this evening as well. So for all of our MVTs, most value traders that were with us last night, please put up your hand if you were with us in our live session last night. You guys are absolute machines. We were online and trading for over 3 hours, bringing our total online time yesterday to around about 4 hours, even though we didn't have $1 for lunch. So if you're with us yesterday, MVT, put up your hand and make sure you've obviously liked this particular live broadcast, and make sure that you are obviously subscribed to the channel. That is obviously super important. It does wonders for our data, does wonders for our analytics, and obviously it's super important. Thank you, Sizo, for obviously jumping in. Welcome to the Globex 360 live TV family. So guys, other than that, again, I'm keeping my focus on dollars for lunch. I'm keeping my focus on this evening's pips for dinner. I hope to see every single one of you there. If you're not going to be there, if you're not yet funded, get sorted out. You need help, you're welcome to engage with our Telegram chatbot, and we have amazing individuals at the office that will assist you and help you out to get you approved, funded, and ready to trade, ready to take advantage of the market. So guys, other than that, I hope you have an amazing day. As always, remember to live and trade the Globex 360 way. I will see you guys on the Dollars for Lunch, and that will be happening a little bit earlier today. As I said, we will probably and more likely start at that 2 o'clock mark, right? So I just want to put in a message. Brilliant stuff. So you guys can look out for that email. It will be hitting your inbox round about 12 o'clock today, at about lunchtime. So obviously once you've got that, let us know, and we will see you in that live event. Until I see you later, have an amazing morning. Goodbye.